Hello and welcome to Mikey Learns. Today's Reddit post we'll be covering is titled Creating 200 Folders Using a List or CSV. I have to create 200 folders for 200 users for data entry. Each user will have access to their respective folder. I'm messing around with Power Automate and I'm overwhelmed. Any tips to automate this? The primary comment we have here at this point in time, by the way, this post was posted on September 15, 2020. The one post we do have, or the one recommendation, is to use PowerShell, and that there's supposedly PNP that would help here. You could do that. You could also use Power Automate. And as the title to the post suggests, using a SharePoint list or an Excel file. Either database, quote database, would work to include numerous other databases. Just depends on what automation tool you're using and how you can fetch the data from that database. The easiest thing I can use here is Excel or a SharePoint list. For this particular demonstration, I'm using Power Automate and a SharePoint list. So jumping over, I've already created some of these backend assets we'll need to demonstrate a viable solution. Starting with a SharePoint site, I've created one called Create Folders. I'm going to show you the admins. This is relevant to a later discussion. The only admin is Micah, me. Alright. So in that site, we have the defaults document library and a list called folders that I created. Now that list has two columns, folder name, which is a single line text field, and person group. This is a people picker field. If you're going to use groups for access though, they need to be mail enabled or have an email address, which also means that this people picker column has to have the checkbox for allow selection of groups. By default, this checkbox is not toggled on. That's relevant because when you're using Power Automate, it's going to ask for an email address for permissions, and it has to have an email address. So jumping over to the admin center, the group's admin center real quick, I have a couple security group examples here. The one I'll be using in this demonstration is security group mail enabled, but I'm going to show you that that people picker field can also detect non-mail enabled groups, so you have to be careful. So if I go to create a item, this group right here is not mail enabled. It's a security group that's not mail enabled, and it will populate on SharePoint, but when it comes to Power Automate, it'll fail because it doesn't have an email address. So that, like I said, the group I'll be going with this is mailed enabled one, which is here. Alright, so I have three line items here, three records. It's very simple. A folder named Micah with a person named Micah getting access, Mike getting Mike, a folder named Mike with Mike getting access, and a folder named group folder with a group getting access. Jumping over to the flow, I'm going to manually create this real quick. It's very simple. I'm just going to trigger it manually. Oops. So what I do need to do is get all the items from that SharePoint list. So I'm going to do a SharePoint get items from the site called create folders. The list name is called folders. I don't need any of these. I don't need to configure any of these other settings. I need two more SharePoint actions. One's called create folders. Create a new folder rather. We'll be creating a folder in the default documents library in the site called create folders. The folder path, I want this to be equal to the folder name column. So I need the value of this column, folder name. When I select this, because I'm pulling from the get items action, it's going to put this action into an apply to each, because it's assuming that there's going to be multiple items. That's fine, we want that. Now within this same apply to each, because I want to do another action on this given item, I need another SharePoint action, and this one is going to be called grant access to an item or folder. So I'm going to pull each item pull each record from this list. I'm going to create a folder for each item, and then I'm going to grant access to each folder that I create. So once again, the same site, create folders, the documents library. Now the ID is going to come from the step above the create new folder. So we need the ID from create new folder. Recipients, I want this value to be equal to the value in this column. Earlier when I was talking about it needing to be a mail-enabled security group or some other group like an M365 group with an email address, is because Flow or Power Automate, this field in particular looks for an email address. If you use display name or something else, it doesn't work. By default, when you click in the field, it doesn't have dynamic options. Click dynamic content. And what we want to do is, from the get items, we want to pull the person or group email, because that's the name of my column. Now, so when it gets to the roles, this is contribute. Can edit is equal to contribute, and can view is equal to read in SharePoint. I did experiment with adding a third column here called edit or view. I made it both a choice column and a single line text field. I could not get either value to populate into this field and the flow work successfully. If someone has an idea as to how to get that to work, that'd be wonderful. So at first, I'm just going to do can view. I'm going to save it. Now, over here in the library, I have a blank library I'm refreshing. I also wiped all permissions from this library just to show that this is that it works as intended. So I'm going to run this flow. When I run this, I'm going to expect 3 folders to appear in that library, and I'm going to expect these 3 folders to have these 3 access. So I'm going to refresh the permission screen for the library. I'm going to click show unique permissions, and you're going to wonder why there's only 2. Now, the one folder that's missing is called Micah folder, right here. The person or group is Micah, and at the beginning of the video I showed you that Micah is the admin, the only admin to the site. What I'm suspecting is Flow recognizes me as having admin, and so it's not giving me read permission because it's irrelevant. I have essentially full control. Going back to the library real quick, actually going back to Flow, we did can view, so I'm going to show you here. The group folder should have the group with read access, which it does. The mic folder should have mic with read access. Alright, so in prior testing, prior to this video, what I did do is to troubleshoot my, what I just said a minute ago about me being administrator. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the Micah folder to be Michael. I'm going to rerun the flow, and we should get Michael as having unique access to the Micah folder. Takes maybe 5 seconds or so. I'm going to refresh. So now we have the Micah folder as having unique permissions, and it should be Michael as having read. Yep. So I do think that it's because I have administrative rights is why it didn't work originally. Once again, you can come in here. The one assumption in this flow, this design, is that every person gets either edit, which is contribute, or view, which is read access to their respective folder. If I change this to edit and run the flow, it's going to retroactively give everyone contribute, which means that they'll also still have read. Hitting back, hitting refresh, going to unique permissions. I'm just going to pick one, Mike folder. So now you see Mike has contribute and read as a result of the flow run I just did. This is one way to build a solution to the post. There's probably other ways. You could definitely use Excel inside of Flow. You could get the rows from Excel and then create SharePoint folders based on column values inside of Excel, and maybe host the file in SharePoint or OneDrive. Doesn't really matter. That doesn't matter as much as the apply to each down here where you're creating the folder and granting access. But the one one thing I would be interested, once again I'll highlight it, is if someone could figure out a way to add a single line text or a choice column to populate the values of can edit and can view, which could then make granting permission dynamic based on the folder and what the desired level of permission is. Well, if you have any questions, please feel free to comment. Take care and have a great day.